Good morning, everyone. My name is Asiyah, and I will be presenting ontology-based representation and comparison of COVID-19 vaccine phase 3 clinical trials with Huang and Anthony Huffman from University of Michigan. 10 months has passed since the first starting of this pandemic. Now, the big question in everyone's mind is when and how we will get a vaccine to stop this coronavirus. On October 18th, a news from The Guardian says, according to WHO, we currently have 11 vaccine candidates in phase 3, 19 in phase 2, 35 in phase 1, and 142 in preclinical phases. While this news nicely presented the information, more questions regarding safety and trials are raised. As a consumer and scientist myself, I would ask these questions to find out if it is safe to get a vaccine when it will be approved. For example, why some vaccine trials are paused and reopened? Will I get a COVID-19 vaccine, although I normally do not get a flu shot? What if the COVID-19 vaccine is harmful to me? So many vaccines, which one should I choose? Are the vaccines tested on people of color, minority groups? What about the pediatric use? What about elderly and high-risk populations? COVID-19 vaccine news out there are confusing for consumers. We see that one day a big company's vaccine trial is on hold, another day resumed in different countries, another vaccine is on hold, and then more. What's going on there? Consumers need data or science-based information in order to make well-informed decisions. Our goal is to provide this kind of information for them. Previously, we have built the vaccine ontology, clinical trial ontology, and Violin, a vaccine research database. VO standardized vaccine information such as vaccine components, mechanisms, types, manufacturers, and more. CTO standardized clinical trial registry and clinical trial metadata. They both use Buffalo framework. Therefore, they are naturally interoperable. Next, I will hand it over to Anthony. He will provide us some updates on COVID vaccine in VO.
Thank you, Asiyah. Currently, there are 22 COVID-19 vaccines within VO. All these vaccines are either registered within a clinical trial or are published within a peer-reviewed source. Most of these vaccines share a common set of antigens, either the spike glycoprotein of SARS-CoV-2 or the actual virus itself. There's one exception shown in parentheses, SARS-CoV-D, which uses the envelope protein. In addition, all these vaccines are within some human clinical trial, even though there's some difference on what organism that they used for their initial animal model, the cocks and mice being more common. What's most interesting is the different sheer amount of different vaccine types, where we're having newer developments with virus-like particle vaccines and RNA vaccines, which are newer technology that are being used. Next slide, please. Here we have a representation within the ontology of ACT1222. You can see that we have relationships with the vaccine that explains between the microbe that it immunizes against, its vaccine antigen, its components, which we use to determine what kind of role the vaccine will have, in addition to what kind of immune response. Since we are also interested in both the actual vaccination and in the vaccinee, we have relationships which describe the frequency and the vaccination route, in addition to qualities like age or biological sex that we use to describe the individual being vaccinated. Okay, back to you, Asiyah.
When we have vaccine information, we can easily link it to clinical trial data using CTO. This figure shows that a vaccine clinical trial investigates a vaccine that is represented in VO. A vaccine has a manufacturer. When the manufacturer takes the sponsor role, it becomes a sponsor of a clinical trial. The clinical trial also has study design, has the enrollment process. The enrollment occurs at clinical sites. Besides that, the clinical trial has follow-up duration as well as enrollment size. Applying this, we are able to connect information from Violin, VO, WHO, and clinical trial registries. Here, we present the 18 phase 3 clinical trials for 11 vaccine candidates. China, Russia, and AstraZeneca dominated current phase 3 trials. China developed 2 types of vaccines, inactivated vaccine and recombinant. They run 8 trials in Turkey, Morocco, UAE, Pakistan, and Russia. Russia developed 2 recombinant vaccines using both adenovirus vector 26 and 5, running 2 trials in Russia and Belarus respectively. AstraZeneca and University of Oxford developed the recombinant vaccine using chimpanzees adenovirus vector. Has 4 trials in Russia, US, and Brazil. Janssen developed a recombinant vaccine with human adenovirus 26 and run its trial widely in US, South America countries, Asia, Ukraine, and South Africa. Moderna and Pfizer developed the mRNA vaccine. They run Moderna's trial is in US and Pfizer in Brazil, US, South Africa, and Turkey. Novavax developed a nanoparticle vaccine using recombinant spike protein and running a trial in UK. At this stage, although without results, we could use the clinical trial registry data to evaluate the reliability of the trial by its study design, enrollment size, whether multiple clinical sites, DMC information. For example, the left of the screen shows the enrollment size of the current phase 3 trials. Nearly half of them are less than 10,000. Surprisingly, there are some phase 3 clinical trials has very small enrollment size, particularly 2 trials only enroll 100 subjects, and 2 enroll 500 and 600, respectively. We will certainly question the result for those trials. The circled ones are the paused trials. Most of the trials are randomized, parallel, and blinded study design. 78 has multiple clinical sites, with DMC oversights the data. Follow-up durations for those trials are mostly 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years. Now, let's hand it over to Philip, and he will talk about the knowledge base that we are building for COVID-19 vaccines.
Thank you, Asiyah. In order to provide an accessible and comprehensive database for information related to COVID-19 vaccines, we have recently developed the COVID-19 Vaccine Knowledge Base, which provides information for vaccines in both clinical trials and in preclinical research. In addition, this database also includes vaccine safety updates, as well as links to other relevant databases and resources, such as WHO and FDA announcements. We plan to monitor any new advancements in COVID-19 vaccine research and update the knowledge base on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. Within the COVID-19 vaccine knowledge base can be found info regarding clinical trial IDs, vaccine type, manufacturer, as well as publications associated with the COVID-19 vaccine. In order to maintain consistency, the vaccine information provided in the knowledge base is synced with corresponding entries found in Vaccine Ontology and Violin. This image on this slide shows the page that features COVID-19 vaccines that are currently undergoing phase 3 clinical trials. Next slide, please. Here we present a timeline of the AZD1222 vaccine. Development of the AZD1222 vaccine began on January 10, 2020, during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, when researchers at the University of Oxford began designing a vaccine to immunize humans from SARS-CoV-2. By March, the University of Oxford had begun recruiting participants for its phase 1 clinical trial and commenced the trial near the end of April. After AstraZeneca announced an agreement to produce the vaccine with Oxford, the first of multiple phase 2-3 clinical trials began late in the month of May. Encouraging results from the phase 1-2 trial were published in July, suggesting that the vaccine did indeed induce an immune response in humans. However, AZD1222 has recently encountered multiple setbacks in several of its phase 3 clinical trials. On September 9, all AZD1222 clinical trials were paused due to an adverse event that occurred in a person who received the vaccine in one of the phase 3 clinical trials. Since then, nearly all clinical trials have resumed, with the exception of a phase 3 trial in the United States, which remains on hold due to an ongoing FDA investigation into the clinical trials procedures. As this timeline illustrates, vaccine research and development involves a complex, time-intensive process, and we hope that members of the public will find the COVID-19 vaccine knowledge base to be a convenient, reliable, and comprehensive resource for COVID-19 vaccine updates. Now I will hand it back to Asiyah, who will discuss the next steps in our research.
So for the future directions, we are going to look into the protocol to obtain the subgroup analysis information. We will keep track COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials information by use CTO and VO, make the data structural and searchable. We also aim to learn from the previous safety signal for predictive analysis, and we will follow up with FDA's guidance and EUA authorization. In conclusion, we aim to provide unbiased data-based information for public good. Welcome to join us and collaborate. Thank you.